As I read aloud your test, your job is to follow along and annotate. Passage 1. Directions. Read the following passage and then answer the questions that follow. From The Mustache by Robert Cormier. Let me tell you what the visit to Lawn Rest was all about. My grandmother is 73 years old. She's a resident, which is supposed to be a better word than patient, at the Lawn Rest nursing home. She used to make the greatest turkey dressing in the world and was a nut about baseball and could even quote batting averages, for crying out loud. She always rooted for the losers. She was in love with the Mets until they started to win. Now she has arterioscoliosis, which the dictionary says is a chronic disease characterized by abnormal thickening and hardening of the arterial walls, which really means she can't live at home anymore or even with us, and her memory has betrayed her as well as her body. She used to wander off and sometimes didn't recognize people. My mother visits her all the time, driving the 30 miles to Lawn Rest almost every day. Because Annie was home for a semester break from college, we had decided to make a special Saturday visit. Now Annie was in bed, sick and groaning theatrically. She's a drama major, but I told my mother I'd go anyway. I hadn't seen my grandmother since she'd been admitted to Lawn Rest. Besides, the place is located on the Southwest Turnpike, which meant I could barrel along in my father's new Le Mans. My ambition was to see the speedometer hit 75. Ordinarily, I use the old station wagon, which can barely stagger up to 50. Frankly, I wasn't too crazy about visiting a nursing home. They reminded me of hospitals, and hospitals turned me off. I mean, the smell of ether makes me nauseous, and I feel faint at the sight of blood. As I approach Lawn Rest, which is a terrible cemetery kind of name, I begin with, I was sorry I hadn't avoided the trip. Then I felt guilty about it. I'm loaded with guilt complexes, like driving like a madman after promising my father to be careful, like sitting in the parking lot looking at the nursing home with dread and thinking how I'd rather be with Cindy. Then I thought of all the Christmas and birthday gifts my grandmother had given me, and I got out of the car, guilty as usual. Inside, I was surprised by the lack of hospital smell, although there was another odor, or maybe the absence of odor. The air was sterile, as if there was no atmosphere at all, or I'd caught a cold suddenly and couldn't taste or smell. A nurse at the reception desk gave me directions. My grandmother was in East 3. I made my way down the tiled corridor and was glad to see that the walls were painted with cheerful colors like yellow and pink. A wheelchair suddenly shot around the corner, self-propelled by an old man, white-haired and toothless, who cackled merrily as he barely missed me. I jumped aside. Here I was, almost getting wiped out by a 2-mile-an-hour wheelchair after doing 75 on the pike. As I walked through the corridor seeking East 3, I couldn't help glancing into the rooms, and it was like some kind of wax museum. All these figures in various stances and attitudes, sitting in beds or chairs, standing at windows as if they were frozen forever in these postures. To tell the truth, I began to hurry because I was getting depressed. I finally found the room and saw my grandmother in bed. My grandmother looks like Ethel Barrymore. I never knew who Ethel Barrymore was until I saw a terrific movie, None But the Lonely Heart, on TV, starring Ethel Barrymore and Cary Grant. Both my grandmother and Ethel Barrymore have these great craggy faces like the side of a mountain and wonderful voices like syrup being poured. Slowly. She was propped up in bed, pillows puffed behind her. Her hair had been combed out and fell upon her shoulders. For some reason, this flowing hair gave her an almost girlish appearance despite its whiteness. She saw me and smiled. Her eyes lit up and her eyebrows arched, and she reached out her hands to me in greeting. Mike, Mike, she said, as I breathed a sigh of relief. This was one of her good days. My mother had warned me that she might not know who I was at first. I took her hands in mine. They were fragile. I could actually feel her bones, and it seemed as if they would break if I pressed too hard. Her skin was smooth, almost slippery, as if the years had worn away all the roughness, the way the wind wears away the surfaces of stones. Mike, I didn't think you'd come, she said, so happy, and she was still Ethel Barrymore in that voice like a caress. I've been waiting all this time. Before I could reply, she looked away out the window. See the birds? I've been watching them at the feeder. I love to see them come. Even the blue jays. The blue jays are like hawks. They take the food that the small birds should have. But the small birds, the chickadees, watch the blue jays and at least learn where the feeder is. She lapsed into silence and I looked out the window. There was no feeder, no birds. There was only the parking lot and the sun glinting on car windshields. I was beginning to feel uneasy because she regarded me with such intensity, those bright eyes. I wondered, are old people in places like this so lonesome so abandoned that they go wild when someone visits? Or was she so happy because today everything was sharp and clear? My mother had described those moments when my grandmother suddenly came out of the fog that so often obscured her mind. I don't know the answers, but it kind of felt spooky getting such an emotional welcome from her. Number 1. What is Mike's motivation for visiting his grandmother at Lawn Rest? A. His sister becomes ill and cannot go. She asks Mike to go to the nursing home in her place. B. Mike is motivated both by regret for having not visited her sooner and also the desire to use his father's car. C. Mike is enthusiastic about visiting his grandmother after remembering joyful childhood memories shared with her. D. While Mike is afraid of visiting his grandmother, he wants to seem mature, so he agrees to go. Number 2. Across the passage, Mike's main source of internal conflict is A. Promising his parents to be careful and then disobeying them. B. How sick and near to death the residents of the nursing home are. C. Wondering how to react to his grandmother's failing mind and body. D. Knowing that he may soon lose his grandmother for good. Number 3. Read these sentences from paragraph 7. I took her hands in mine. They were fragile. I could actually feel her bones, and it seemed as if they would break if I pressed too hard. Her skin was smooth, almost slippery, as if the years had worn away all the roughness, the way the wind wears away the surfaces of stones. This descriptive language, A, demonstrates that Mike realizes that ordinary people can have extraordinary lives. B, suggests that Mike is attentive to some of the qualities associated with old age. C, implies that Mike's grandmother has had to overcome major hardships in her life. D, emphasizes how Mike longs to see his grandmother as she looked when she was younger. Number 4. In paragraph 8, the grandmother uses the following analogy about birds. The blue jays are like hawks. They take the food that the small birds should have. But the small birds, the chickadees, watch the blue jays and at least learn where the feeder is. What theme is the grandmother trying to communicate through this comparison? A. Every family has some members like blue jays, some like hawks, and some like chickadees. B. All birds, even the tough ones, should be viewed as beautiful creatures and be admired. C. Survival is just a matter of hiding from the larger birds. D. Even negative aspects of life, such as selflessness, can serve a larger purpose. Number 5. What is the meaning of the word obscured as it is used in paragraph 10? A. Shattered. B. Closed. C. Saddened. D. Confused. Number 6. Throughout the story, Mike's first-person point of view, A, reveals both his moments of emotional maturity and his youthful perspective. B, clarifies why Mike's grandmother wishes that her family visited more often. C, shows his continuous attempts to become a trustworthy adult. D, portrays how grateful he is to have more time with his grandmother. Open-ended response. Directions. Compose your written answers for the open-ended response on the separate answer document provided. You may use this space for drafting purposes, but only the writing in the separate answer document will be scored. Answer the following question about the mustache. Number 7. How does the setting influence Mike's character over the course of the story? Use at least 2 details from the text to support your answer. Passage 2. Directions. Read the following passage and then answer the questions that follow. Don't Trust Your Memory by Noah Brennan. You'd all agree that I'm standing up here speaking to you, wouldn't you? If I ask you tomorrow to describe what I'm wearing or to summarize what I'd said, though, you'd probably give me an almost as many different answers as there are people in this audience. Would some of you be lying? Perhaps, but most of you, being honest, ethical, and truthful people like me, would all sincerely believe your versions of the truth. So why would I be likely to get so many different reports? I believe that it's because of the way that we take in information and reconstruct it. Of course, you may disagree about why this occurs, but the fact that it does must lead you to agree that memories are not just reliable enough for us to trust them with absolute certainty. That's right. Even when we're sure about a fact or detail because we've seen it with our own eyes, we could be wrong. According to the journalist Michael C. Dorf, numerous psychological studies have shown that human beings are not very good at identifying people they saw only once for a relatively short period of time. The study revealed error rates as high as 50%, a frightening statistic given that many convictions in criminal trials may be based largely or solely on such testimony. I agree. That's one of the reasons I'm here. I want you to consider this shocking degree of inaccuracy the next time the only evidence that can convict or free someone is the testimony of an eyewitness. That is, a person who saw the crime taking place. Don't be the juror who condemns an innocent person to prison simply because you sense the witness is telling the truth. That witness may very well be telling the truth as he or she believes it, and yet the witness could be horribly wrong. Now consider this. The same astonishing statistic should apply to you as well. In other words, half the time, events you have witnessed with your own eyes may not, in fact, have happened precisely as you think they did. If we don't understand this and learn to evaluate critically what we remember, we may draw wrong and possibly harmful conclusions about ourselves and the world. If you want to consider yourself a truly intelligent person, you can't regard your memory as perfect. This is pretty shocking news. It is so surprising, in fact, that people don't tend to believe it. In one study done by a psychologist, people who witnessed a crime identified the wrong person as the criminal in 1 out of 2 cases. And yet, even after confronting with this fact, 93% of these witnesses still believe that eyewitness testimony is reliable. That just doesn't make any sense, and it shows why my message is so important to everyone here, or at least 93 out of 100 of you. Maybe a closer look at the process of acquiring and recalling memories will help convince you of the fact that you shouldn't be so quick to believe eyewitness testimony, or even your own recollections. First, we don't store complete and accurate information because we don't take perfect snapshots of reality. We observe things selectively, giving more importance to some details than to others. When we are where we are with respect to what's happening, how good our eyesight or hearing it are, what we're interested in, and who the participants are can all affect what we focus on. Second, when you think about an experience or discuss it with others, you are reconstructing your own version of it from the details you can recall. During this reconstruction or remembering process, you or others may introduce errors, distortions, or even false memories. David Beversdorf assistant professor of neurology at Ohio State University, says that it's very easy to convince people that they have seen something they never saw. He and his colleagues asked people to identify a set of geometric shapes. Then they showed the subjects another set of shapes, some from the original set, along with a new shape. Not surprisingly, the people correctly identified 4 out of the 5 original shapes. More than half of the time, however, they also reported that they had already seen the new image. Now, if you insist, you may go on thinking that you are the one person who records reality perfectly in all its fullness and can recall it in its entirety at will without outside influences coloring in any way. But I'm not arrogant enough to believe that I am always going to be among the 50% to get remembered details right. So I hope you will at least consider what I've shared with you today. But do me a favor and don't trust yourself to remember everything I've said. Please pick up a written copy of this speech as you leave the room. Number 8. What is Brennan's central idea in paragraph 2? A. Though sometimes people observe events, they usually forget the details of those events, so they can never be trusted to talk about what happened. B. Many trial witnesses purposefully mislead their jurors to think they are telling the truth, but they are actually being dishonest. C. Witnessing an event in person does not mean that event will always be accurately remembered, which means that eyewitness testimonies are imprecise. D. People can be wrong about details even when they see something happen with their own eyes, because they may have poor vision. Number 9. What does the phrase shocking degree of inaccuracy from paragraph 2 add to the author's speech? A. The extreme words illustrate how Brennan believes many people are not ethical. B. The phrase makes Brennan seem more serious than journalist Michael C. Dorf was. C. The loaded language emphasizes Brennan's disapproval of eyewitness testimony. D. This phrase suggests that Brennan is frustrated by the conclusions of these studies. Number 10. Read the following quotation from paragraph 3. If we don't understand this and learn to evaluate critically what we remember, we may draw wrong and possibly harmful conclusions about ourselves and the world. Based on these lines, what statement about the author is most likely true? A. He is extremely concerned that problematic memories can physically injure people. B. The author worries that no one can remember the important details from events. C. He has firsthand experience seeing the consequences of misused memories. D. Brennan understands that flawed memories have the power to put people in danger. Number 11. Which sentence is the best summary of paragraph 4? A. People find it difficult to believe that eyewitness testimony can be so inaccurate. B. Witnesses have trouble identifying criminals without evidence. C. Some psychology studies can produce surprising and unbelievable results. D. Most criminal cases involve eyewitnesses who saw the crime. Number 12. What factual detail does Brennan use to defend his argument that people think their memories are more accurate than they are? A. If I ask you tomorrow to describe what I'm wearing or to summarize what I'd said, though you would probably give me almost as many different answers as there are people in this audience. Paragraph 1. B. Don't be the juror who condemns an innocent person to prison simply because you sense the witness is telling the truth. Paragraph 2. C. If you want to consider yourself a truly intelligent person, you can't regard your memory as perfect. Paragraph 3. D. Not surprisingly, the people correctly identified 4 out of 5 original shapes. More than half of the time, however, they also reported that they had already seen the new image. Paragraph 5. Number 13. Overall, Brennan's speech is meant to A. Caution readers about the consequences of inaccurate memories. B. Criticize how individuals trust their personal memories. C. Reflect on the importance of using experts in trials. D, define the different terms associated with the science of memory loss. Open-ended response. Directions. Compose your written answers for the open-ended response on the separate answer document provided. You may use this space for drafting purposes, but only the writing in the separate answer document will be scored. Answer the following question about don't trust your memory. Number 14. How does paragraph 6 contribute to Brennan's message? Directions. Use both the mustache and don't trust your memory to answer questions 15 and 16. Number 15. With which of the following ideas would Mike from the mustache and Noah Brennan, author of Don't Trust Your Memory, likely agree? A. There is a fine line between a lie and an inaccurate recollection. B. It is beyond our control to hold treasured memories forever. C. People's memories can betray them. D. Separation and loss touch everyone. Number 16. One major difference between the mustache and don't trust your memory is A. While both texts make claims about the effect of memory on a person's life, only the mustache uses social and historical context. B. The mustache includes details about what happens when someone is losing his or her memory, and don't trust your memory focuses on a more general, imprecise memories. C. Though both texts show first-person accounts of memory loss, only don't trust your memory includes scientific explanation for human behavior. D. While the mustache focuses on a conflict between a teenager and his grandmother, don't trust your memory describes how to resolve conflicting accounts of events.